Politeness here is like a cone on ice, visible from afar, rarely useful, always in the way. False alarm. Snow came sparse, wet, gray at noon, the hour before the streetlights think to help. In the county market lot by the holiday pumps, Henry Boak opened the trunk of his silver Toyota Corolla, set in 3 green bags from the garden aisle, and put a check mark in his head. Salt, yes. He didn't read the leaf BAGS tag. The check mark outranks the letters. A cart left without a chain rolled off the corral, touched the bumper of a Honda CR-V with a proud hockey mom sticker, and stopped like it was apologizing. Henry looked, held the look, decided it was the wind. In Minnesota, politeness often looks like refusing to act. At the door, Candace, the new cashier with a fading badge, asked, eyes down, "Sugar?" Henry said, "No thanks." Pause. "Slick today," he added. She nodded without looking up. Words are rationed here like electricity. A gray Ford F-150 with a city services logo parked crosswise by the sand pile. Out came Neil Peterson, inspector, notebook in his pocket. He had a complaint, unauthorized application on commercial premises, typed in Times New Roman with extra spaces. He looked at the entry, clean and slick. Wrote, "Inspection required. Paper likes necessity." A teenager in a dark puffer slid past. Joey, he coughed, said sorry like he'd bumped the air, and grabbed the unchained cart, rolled it to the CR-V row, peeked through the glass, a shoe box, a stick. Anything is someone's habit. Henry took a box cutter, nicked the green bag. Dry leaf and dust smell came out like a garage in May. He poured a handful at the threshold. Leaves lay on ice and did nothing, the appearance of effort. He set his coffee cup on the roof, started the engine. The cup hit the antenna, coffee slid over the glass like brown snow. Neil wrote, "Non-profile material applied." Rick pitched a lottery ticket past the trash. Ed adjusted his hat, glanced around like he was waiting on somebody. Joey came back, cart empty, eyes too. Snow kept falling like a quiet error. Evening would put time, place, and 3 signatures in the report. The ice would remain under the leaves. At Lakeside Dental, morning began with the entry mat, where dark rectangles of salt and water alternated like an error chart with no legend. Henry Boak arrived 7 minutes early, took off his boots by the counter, set them toe to the wall at a right angle, changed into soft gray sneakers, and straightened the mat edge with his shoe to align with the tile line. On his desk lay number 2 pencils, a whispery pad of check boxes, and stickers labeled vinyl gloves 100 CT, unpacked strictly in 3s. He marked, gloves checked, pause, another, coffee bought, separate line, salt yes. Coen at reception, a woman in an oatmeal cardigan, powered on the PC and said without looking up, "Well yeah, slick out." Henry nodded. The pause hung like cooling tea. Coen clicked the mouse, typing the building manager, requesting salt at front steps. The sign-off auto filled sincerely. "Politeness here is a sticker, holds until it's wet." Through the glass door slid Neil Peterson, now with a folder sprouting plastic tabs. He came to align the protocol. The waiting room smelled of mint and plastic. "Small check on a complaint," Neil said. Henry nodded. "Not your fault." "Well yeah," Neil added, pulling a form. He spoke without looking and wrote, "Possible noncompliance with sanding salting procedures adjacent to premises." Paper sounded like TV snow. Henry went to the car, sat, but the engine didn't catch. He took out his pad, opened the morning list. 3rd line, salt yes. The check mark sat true, number 2 pencil under a ruler. He held on the word salt, then moved to yes. Closed his eyes. Leaves, not salt, leaves. The word spun like an unchained cart. He opened his eyes, lifted the pencil to strike it out, but the hand stopped 2 centimeters shy. He closed the pad uncorrected, started the car. Radio came on. "Local roads are glazed, authorities recommend." Henry hit power. The cabin's silence went thick as ice. Between patients, Coen called the city line, quiet as if apologizing. "So, if possible, yes." She got an auto voice, "Ticket received, stand by." Henry meanwhile lined up the sanitizers to penciled dots he'd stippled on the desktop. He loved edge and corner coincidences. A siren in his head. "Salt." He looked out. At the entrance, green scraps of wet leaves clumped in stains. The mailman came in, shook snow onto the mat, said, "Well, yeah, weather," and left an envelope, City Services, stamped. They opened it with Neil present. Inside, a copy complaint times New Roman extra spaces, illegal sanding salting. Coen pressed her lips like the taste was paper. "We didn't even," she began. Neil nodded and set the date. In the hall, Betty the cleaner's mop shuffled, leaving a wet lane, a perfect parallel to the mat. Henry lifted the mat corner and slid a paper towel under a temporary bridge. Near noon, Ed came, Rick's cousin, with a resume printed at home, the bottom ink a bit washed. "So, looking for work," he said, worrying his hat. Snow crumbs sifted out like the missing salt. Coen smiled politely. "Leave it, yup." "Well, yeah, blew off the roof," she asked, seeing the crumbs. Ed nodded, though it wasn't true. He left, forgetting the resume. Henry squared it, stapled, checked, received. Joey, hauling a box of vape cartridges in his backpack, wandered into the pharmacy by mistake. "Hey, vape chargers," the pharmacist. "ID." He left, wet prints on the linoleum. The prints led to the door and vanished in the mat, where the leaves clung to soles. After lunch, Neil left a copy of the protocol. "Photo required," he said. Henry nodded, photographed the stoop, leaves arranged neat as his pencils. The ice in the shot had the shine of lacquered truth. Henry sent the file and checked, evidence attached. At the bottom of the list remained blank space for something important that always gets added late when it won't help. The epitaph hadn't been written yet, but the mat was already soaking up its first words. A patrol Ford Explorer rolled up to the small house at Maple and 3rd, where the mailbox leaned and a plastic buck on the porch lacked one antler. The address matched nearly. The report read an 8, the placard a 3, but snow had filled the gap between digits and made a number with bad handwriting. Officer Reeves cracked the door, drew in the cold, looked by the book, perimeter, then bell. "Well, yeah," he told his partner, and they climbed the steps where the second tread was glass slick. Reeves put his palm to the rail, knocked with his knuckles. The paws stretched like gum in a freeze. Ed opened in a knit hat, holding a steaming mug with a fish on it. "So," he asked, unsurprised, like cops were the mail. "Morning, conversation, you at County Market yesterday?" Reeves said, gentle. Ed nodded. "Well, yeah," pause. "Would have bought a cap, no money." Politeness sounded like confession. The partner wrote, "Present at location." Out back, neighbor Rick teased his Buick with short gasp bursts so it doesn't flood. He raised a hand. Reeves nodded back like they had a plan. Henry, walking past with a Menard's bag bought this time rock salt, no leaves, saw the patrol and slowed. "Mr. Boak?" Reeves asked. Henry nodded. "This is Mr." He glanced at Ed. Ed supplied. "Did you see Mr. Ed yesterday at the store?" "Well, yeah," Henry said carefully, because truth is like ice, don't jump on it. The protocol gained, contact confirmed. Ed rubbed his hat, snow fell onto the rug, looking like salt he didn't own. "Something happened, conversation, nothing big," Reeves said in the tone usually attached to fines. Across the way, a woman peered out from a van window, her proud hockey mom sticker in frame. She thought about the cart, the scuff, and her insurance, dialed the hotline and said, "Well, yeah, it's them again." Joey stood by the schoolyard, backpack holding the cartridges next to a coonskin tail hat found at a thrift store. He'd mixed up cars yesterday and dropped the box in the coach's CRV, thinking same model, and now wanted to fix it. He called Craig, who said, "Yup, wait." Neil arrived later with a folder and a yellow urgent sticky. Came up to Reeves, complained about illegal sanding, salting, and suspicious activity. Reeves nodded, lines up. Henry tried to clarify that the bags were wrong and smiled apologetically. Neil wrote, "Non-profile material applied by complainant personally." Coen called Henry. "Well, yeah," City wrote again, saw the photo. Henry nodded into the phone. "I'll fix it." He looked at Ed and added, "We met by the caps." It came out like together, though together they'd only stood in a line of glances. The patrol left, tracks on the snow like two brackets. Ed shut the door, came back to the stoop, sat, texted Rick. Police came, asked about the store. He held his thumb over send, erased it, pocketed the phone. Henry passed with the salt bag, saw Ed, stopped. "Well, yeah, you good?" he asked, shifting the weight. Ed looked at him. The pause stretched like a rubber band. Henry opened his mouth to mention the bags, the leaves, the mistake, but what came was, "If anything, say." Ed nodded slow. "So there." It sounded less like agreement, more like a diagnosis without tests. Something flashed in the window. Henry turned. The woman with the phone stood at the glass, camera on them. The shutter was soft, but Henry heard it like someone checked a box in a stranger's list. The curtain fell. Henry said to Ed, "She saw us together." Ed didn't answer. The pause grew heavy like wet snow before a branch snaps. Henry nodded to himself and walked on, the salt bag pulling his arm like an anchor. Rick flooded the engine, stalled, told the air, "So there." Henry went home holding the salt tighter than paper. Reeves radioed in a plate number he'd written yesterday off the Honda. One digit was off, but numbers get loose in the cold. At school, the coach opened his hatch and found the box. He said donations to himself and shut it, deciding to deal later. The mistake quietly moved to another address. Evening hotline took a call. The voice was familiar, Candace from County Market. "Well, yeah, saw a man in a hat, with a tail, I think, or the other one. Happens a lot." The operator typed, "Hat with decorative tail, frequent visitor." "Can you describe?" "Well, yeah, average jacket, dark or light tail, for sure." She spoke with confidence as if from an hour ago, while mixing up Ed with Joey and both with a third man. The operator marked, "Witness reliable retail employee." Polite inaccuracy slid into the folder beside the window photo, where Henry and Ed stood together like accomplices who never spoke. Morning at County Market was bright and flat like a report. Clouds pressed the sign. Letters shivered in a puddle. Only the protocol felt permanent. Neil got there first, parked the F-150 caddy corner to the sand heap, flipped the beacon. Shot the "Use salt responsibly" placard, measured 3 paces to a black smear on the ice, wrote, "Slip zone 0.9 m, paper likes numbers, not ice." The manager, Mr. Curtis, came out in a jacket with a 2-centimeter unzip at the bottom. "Well, yeah, inspection." Neil nodded. "Procedure." He showed the checklist: material, responsible party, photos before after. Curtis sighed, "Customer mistake, not ours, we didn't salt." Neil turned the page, tapped, "Premises responsibility per procedure 12B, paragraph 3, front entry zone." Curtis looked at the form, then Neil, then the snow. "Well, yeah," he said softly, like a man conceding that paper outruns logic. He called the kid with the pallet Jack. The Jack squeaked like it agreed. Green leaf shadows clung to the entry mat, footnotes nobody reads. Candace rang coffees, sugar, the buyer nodded. Pause, him again, huh? Chin toward Neil. "Well, yeah," the buyer said, eyes on nothing. A carol about snow and bells played, bells replaced in reality by the door sensor. Henry came with a Menard's salt bag, big crystals, blue letters. He set it by the threshold like an apology. "I can spread." "Careful," Curtis said, glancing at Neil. Neil lifted a hand. "Stop, before photo first." He took it, nodded. Henry swung the plastic scoop in an arc. Crystals scattered, some melted into puddles with a soft hiss. The entry looked more responsible. Neil wrote up, "Non-profile material previously applied. Fine recommended, warning." Curtis nodded, done arguing. Henry listened, nodded like agreeing with weather. Then a city truck pulled up with bags of sand salt mix. 2 workers slid a pallet by the wall. One of them, same jacket as Neil's, muttered, "Well, won't cover everyone." The uniform suggested order. A gust lifted the pallet skirt. The top bag shifted. A green shred from yesterday's tier sailed across the lot like a bird without a plan. It stuck to a school bus windshield, turning out. The driver, flannel shirt, thermos on the dash, flicked wipers. The leaf smeared a green streak, a wet brushstroke. "Well, yeah, needs a wash," he told himself and stayed en route. The bus passed the school lot where Joey would stand an hour later waiting for Craig. A traffic pole camera recorded the bus number 0947, the green smear. The footage filed to unrelated incidents, roadway monitoring, waiting for someone to relate. At school, Coach Jim opened his CRV and saw the cartridges box, decided they were parent donations, carried it to the gym. "A gift," he said to the boys. They snorted. "Well, yeah, can we?" "Later," he said, locking it in the equipment room. Joey waited by the fence, shifting like a pigeon on ice, called Craig. "Where?" "On my way." Craig picked the wrong door and tripped the ceiling camera. "Security, Mr. Larry, got an anonymous tip." "Well, yeah, a box in the equipment room, suspicious." He checked the labels, understood nothing, called dispatch. "Procedure controlled by," the dispatcher said. Larry nodded to himself. Joey saw him on the radio and backed into the shrubs. Craig, hunting the coach, stepped onto the lot, mixing up buildings. "Where are you?" "Here." "Well, yeah, see an F-150. It was a city truck, not Neil's. Mistaking trucks is a handy habit." Neil finished, gave Curtis a copy, filed another in plastic. "After photo," he said. Henry spread one more arc tidy at the edges. In the picture, the salt shone like a correction applied late. Neil signed and timed the page. At that time, Larry locked the equipment room and walked to the principal's office, the box inside. Joey dissolved into a line of parents with thermoses. Craig hopped into the wrong F-150 to warm up, panicked when the alarm barked, bolted, his tracks curling like quotation marks still hunting a sentence. By noon, gray got thick as batting, the day forgot its edges. At Lakeside Dental, the ice turned bluish, clinging to concrete. Henry came out with a scoop, arced the last of the salt like painting parking lines, but leaf crumbs from the old bag, mixed with salt, bled into stains, the look of work without result. "Careful," Coen said from the door, hand on the handle. Mrs. Lind, narrow-shouldered in a purple puffer, stepped out, slipped on the wet leaves, dropped hard, her wrist finding the stair edge. The sound was short, a handle snapping. "So there," she said through teeth, and the air went empty. Henry dialed 911. Coen brought a bag of ice to the wrist, a symbolic win over the material that ruled the day. Coen crouched with her on the step, holding the bag. "Hurts?" she asked softly. Mrs. Lind nodded, trying a smile. "Yes, but thank you, you're kind." Coen adjusted the bag so it wouldn't slide. "It's just ice." Mrs. Lind shook her head. "No, really kind, not everyone would." The pause lay between them as gently as snow on a mitt. Coen looked at the stoop where green stains still held. "Should have cleared better. That's on us," Mrs. Lind cut in. "It's slick everywhere, not your fault." Plain words, no decoration, truth too heavy for protocols, heavier than any report. Henry heard from the doorway, scoop in hand. "Not your fault," the simple words that should lighten but instead pressed like wet clothes. He watched Coen walk Mrs. Lind to the car, careful steps, a slow ice dance. He thought, that's the way, slow, careful. But time for that ended back at the supermarket threshold when he'd poured the first leaves and checked the box. The report would read entry injury, slick surface, and the insurer would want before after. Henry shot the photos, leaves silvered on ice like decorations out of place. He noted the time and checked the box, a reflex without manners. Joey watched for the coach's CRV at the school lot. "Practice today," he said into the phone. Craig, "Well, yeah, grab the box and done." They came near evening, parents drifting chain-like to the doors, mass lights stretching shadows mercilessly. Coach Jim came out with keys in a bag, spotted two kids in bad jackets by his car. "What do you need?" "Well, yeah, a mix-up with a box." Joey tried a smile. Jim thumbed the hatch shut and took 2 steps back. Under his heel, loose grit mixed with leaves, the grains turned his foot sideways. Jim pivoted, heel went, knee folded, elbow rose, and the back of his head met a hitch ball parked half a meter behind. The impact was dull and short. Jim lay on his side, eyes open. Blood found the snow like a thin red line that doesn't accept edits. A key fob fell from his pocket, metal, "World's Best Coach" engraved with a small whistle on a chain. It pinged on ice like a coin in a vending slot, a clear, nearly cheerful sound. It rolled a few centimeters and stopped at Joey's boot. Joey stood still, mouth open, breathing through it, staring at the fob like it was an exam ticket with the wrong answer. "So there," Craig said softly, not regret, a review of a movie that disappointed. They froze for 3 heartbeats and ran in opposite directions as if splitting blame splits outcome. Parents noticed the body after a minute. The cries were muffled like through glass. Larry keyed his radio, said accident, then added possible persons fled. Procedure demanded cones and tape. Tape was in the closet, cones by the football field. They set them straight as if order could govern time. Candace later told an officer she'd seen a hat with a tail, and memory stretched enough to hook it to Ed. "Well, yeah, he's often here," she added, not knowing the detail would anchor the story. Neil, notified of the death on the school lot, updated his form, interrelated incidents within a 2-mile radius. He didn't leave his cab, he wrote in the heat, thermos warming his knees. Henry learned about the coach from the counter radio that evening after the clinic closed. The announcer was steady. "Youth coach, parking lot accident, police seek witnesses." Henry sat in the car, hands on the wheel, but the engine didn't turn. He took the pad from his coat, opened the list. Third line, salt, yes. The check sat straight as ever. He lifted the pencil, slowly with pressure, crossed it out. The graphite scored the paper. He tried to write below, leaves mistake, but the hand stopped at the L. The letter came out crooked like the cart track on the bumper. He looked at it, closed the pad face down on the passenger seat, started the car. Radio auto resumed. "Witnesses report 2 males." Henry hit power, but the voice stayed in the cabin like coffee sent from the morning spill baked into the upholstery. He set both hands on the wheel and sat one more minute in a silence louder than any protocol. Morning began with letters. Coen printed an insurer's note, preliminary liability assessment pending photos before-after. She slipped it into a clear sleeve like a fish tank and told the air, "Well, yeah." Henry brought a thumb drive with timestamps and asked, "Polite, send now." Coen nodded. He stood sideways to the counter to keep clear. His phone buzzed, "City Services. Additional documentation required for the entry zone." The voice ruler straight. Henry nodded into the line. The ruler floated between them. At school, Larry signed his statement. Accident and slick surface stood on separate lines like estranged relatives. The principal added, "Awaiting box report." The box sat in the equipment room, sealed with for control tape. Joey read about the coach in local news and texted Craig. "Well, yeah, it's bad." Craig, "Yup, we'll grab it at night." They didn't. Fear and politeness rarely collide head-on, one yields. Neil compiled a summary. He laid out photos, stoop with leaves, salted edges, school lot, cones, city truck. At the bottom, dispatch note, joint audit of sand salt subcontractors. Neil read subcontractors and looked at his F-150, parked beside it, the same truck, municipal crew, same look, same logo. "Well, yeah," he said and added, "unsanctioned private actions. Paper likes phrases with minimal owner." The city dropped pallets of mix at the school lot by day. Two workers in beige jackets tried to pivot in tight space. Joey and Craig watched from behind a Subaru Outback. "That F-150 ours," Joey whispered. "Well, yeah," Craig said and went to the bed to find their box that wasn't there. He yanked the pallet's edge, the top bag unrolled, green plastic split, and wet leaf matter mixed with salt slid down like a rug. The driver saw the label on the torn bag, Leaf BAGS for garden use only. He turned to his buddy. "Well, yeah, someone mixed up." The buddy nodded. The driver tugged the wheel to miss the slick pile. The rear swung, clipped a pallet jack, shoved it into a passerby, a man with a thermos and a Fargo Moorhead Red Hawks cap. He hopped back, stepped on wet leaf, lost footing, and fell under the rear wheel. The impact was low, not loud. The second corpse arrived without words. The driver killed the engine, got out, looked at the wheel, then the bag. "Yup, not for roads," he said, like that explained it all. His buddy stood with the radio, not pressing the button. "So there," one worker said. Joey stared at the track like a correction worse than the mistake. Craig backed off, leaving quote mark prints. The patrol came quick. Larry ran the tape. Neil arrived with his folder and stood so his beacon would make the picture. "Unsanctioned actions," he said, quiet. The officer nodded, filling the witnesses' field. That evening at Henry's, Ed called by. They stood in the entry, boots on. "Well, yeah, we should talk," Ed said, eyes down. He took off his hat, needed it. "Got offered work in Dakota, have to go." Henry nodded, "Understand." Ed looked up for the first time. The pause went tight like ice before the crack. The look was straight, no politeness. Henry looked at his boots, then the mat, then Ed. "Leaves instead of salt," he said quietly. "That's where it started." Ed blinked. "What?" "I bought leaves, not salt, at County Market, Saturday." The words were short hammer taps. "Spread the stoop with leaves," checked the box. The words settled between them like ice nobody cleared. Ed stood with his hat, mouth open, then slowly put it back on, adjusted the edge. "So there," he said, not agreement, not forgiveness. It sounded like an epitaph for when there's nothing else. He turned and left, closing the door softly, like not to wake someone. Henry stayed in the hall, looking at the mat with Ed's wet boot prints. They'd dry by morning. By night, they arrested Joey and Craig on suspicion of illegal distribution and creating a hazardous situation. Neil was called for a chat about report inconsistencies. He brought the folder, added another copy, said procedure. The desk sergeant nodded. "Well, yeah." At Lakeside Dental, Henry squared the stack of photos and wrote archive on the envelope. The word lay straight. Snow was forecast by morning. The county courtroom was tight and bright like a dental op. Linoleum shone, benches squeaked, a clock ticked. Joey in a stretched sleeve sweater sat by a public defender, young, neat beard, mint smell. Craig one step off, eyes down, laces undone. The charges: illegal distribution of nicotine cartridges and creating a hazardous situation resulting in death. "Do you plead?" the judge said flat. "Uh-huh," Joey said quiet, like it could slip past the stenographer. Craig nodded. The protocol added abbreviated plea. The terms were mid-range, like February temps, enough to remember, not enough to discuss. Neil stood apart, plaid shirt, no tie. The prosecutor read, falsification of procedural acts and abuse of authority. So there, Neil's lawyer said, pointing to department overload and inspection quotas. The judge gave probation, recommended dismissal, and mandatory courses. Paper found a phrasing that didn't offend the ear. Neil nodded and left without looking back. In the hall, he set his folder on the sill and squared the edges. Habits outlive positions. Henry and Ed appeared as witnesses. They spoke short. Saw him by the cap rack. Well, yeah, was there. Questions circled time, light, car makes. Words formed a bridge no one wanted to cross. That night both went home. Ed found temp work at Menard's, end of shift duty to square pallets to the paint line. Henry at Lakeside Dental signed invoices and stuck new labels, a darker marker. At the city council, they discussed comprehensive ice safety measures. Voices polite and empty. Additional cones, one said. Well, yeah, outreach, another. Candace emailed police an update about the tail hat, but clarifications rarely get quoted. At the schoolyard, the coach's locker got a new lock and a door tag. In memory, parents left paper cups of coffee and white ribbons. The ribbons wet like complaints without follow-up. Later in the investigator's office, a short exchange locked the chain. Well, yeah, where'd it start? The officer asked, checking the call log printouts. Bags, Henry said, eyes down. Leaf bags instead of salt. Pause. Cart hit the CRV, Neil's complaint. Number recorded wrong. Box went to the wrong car. Leaves on ice. Hitch ball. The words stood in a row like road flags, no footnotes needed. The officer nodded and put a period. Formally, cause was found. Practically, it comforted nobody. At home, Henry opened a fresh pad, same as the old, blue cover, lines straight like paving stones. He looked at the first page, blank and white, and slowly crossed it corner to corner with a number 2. Turned to the second, wrote at the top, archive, underlined once, then again the line laying exactly under the first. He raised the pencil to put a check mark beside it, like always. The hand moved slower, as if the pencil weighed more or the air thickened. The check came out straight as ever under a ruler, the angle correct. He looked and saw a cross, not a check, a cross like on a stone or a form marked denied. He closed the pad and put it in the desk under the invoices. The habit stayed, the meaning changed. In the county archive, Mrs. Dane filed a new folder. Parking lot incidents, county market, winter. Inside, copies of acts, before-after shots, message printouts, the court order, 2 thin brochures with salting recommendations. Edges even, holes clean. On the shelf beside, school grounds safety, city services, audits, lakeside dental liability. Space for the next folder left in advance, 2 fingers wide. When evening snow returned, sparse, wet like gray radio, County Market put up a new rack at the door, promo leaf bags. The price strip printed short on one edge and nobody minded. Candace ran the morning coffee. A customer stepped up, took a cup. Sugar? She asked, eyes down. He nodded. Pause, Candace rang it, her look sliding to the green bag rack by the door. Well, yeah, on promo again, she thought, and didn't say. She set the cup on the tray, slightly crooked like always. The same song as last week came on about snow and bells, bells replaced in reality by the door's chime. The customer took the cup, nodded thanks, walked out. A cart stood by the corral, chain dangling unlatched. Snow kept falling. Politeness took its position again like a cone on ice, the appearance of order in a slip zone. The folder waited in the archive, check marks prepared for new lists. Epitaph, the checks are straight, the ice is under them.